Welcome to Fractional Futures, the essential podcast for CEOs, investors, and senior marketing executives looking to unlock the power of fractional marketing leadership. I'm Paul Mills, your guide on this journey, where me and my special guests uncover how this innovative leadership model is reshaping the business landscape. Whether you're a business leader looking to build a competitive advantage, an investor seeking to enhance the value of your portfolio, or a senior marketing executive considering a fractional career, this podcast is for you. We'll share expert insights, provide actionable strategies, and explore real-world success stories to help you leverage fractional marketing leadership for maximum impact. Tune into Fractional Futures and discover how to revolutionize your business and career. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Fractional Futures, where I'm joined by Dan Gwalter, an executive coach and founder of No Nonsense Leadership. Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm very well, Paul. Very excited about getting this episode out. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, equally looking forward to this one. I think this is what I'm quite passionate about. So in our last episode, we explored what fractional marketers need to do to articulate their value proposition. We'll be talking about the importance of trust in B2B client relationships. We'll be looking at strategies for building trust, and we'll be looking at how to leverage trust for long-term client retention. So Dan, we've not known each other that long, but we've gone through this process of getting to know each other, building trust, and here we are today recording a whole bunch of podcast episodes for our listeners. Trust is a very important thing in any way of life. Trust is there in relationships, partnerships, personal relationships, business partnerships. When you're coaching executives, especially those who haven't even won their first client, how can they command trust from the very first interaction, and how can they maintain that trust over time?
Great question. Let's take a step back, right? When you first come into this marketplace as a, call it what you like, consultant, advisor, fractional, etc., the big problem that you face is that you're not known, not liked, and not trusted. And there's no foul in that statement. It's not that you've done anything wrong. It's that yesterday you didn't exist and today you do. And so everything you do in those early stages of building your business and going to market is really there to build trust. If I look at platforms such as LinkedIn and Google, they prioritize authority and trustworthiness as their two sort of pillars as to how you're going to achieve organic reach, if organic reach still exists. So how do you do that? Well, I guess it's not what people think it is. It's not just in that sort of initial contact with clients, because for an initial contact to happen, you had to have already achieved a level of trustworthiness and credibility. Otherwise, people don't come to you in the first place. And this is where a lot of people really struggle. When I speak to people and they say, I've been doing this for 6 months, I haven't had a single lead, I haven't spoken to a single client, I'm putting out lots of great content. The big red flag that raises for me is that you haven't achieved the sort of baseline level of credibility and trust to enable people to engage with you in that first instance. And so I guess a good starting point is personal branding. And I don't mean, I know we're speaking to marketeers and, the word branding has different connotations to different people. To be really clear, what I don't mean is color schemes, fonts, graphic design type branding. I actually mean the truest sense of the phrase personal branding, your tone of voice, how you are perceived by the market. Are you optimistic and uplifting? Are you edgy and bold? What is it? And I guess there's a sort of an observation in that space is that on day one, most fractional consultants make the same mistake, which is they carry their big corporate personal brand, the person they were in that industry, they carry that into their new solopreneur journey. And it doesn't resonate because you're not a big corporate brand anymore. You're not a we, you're an I. You're not talking from the position of having the backing of a multi-million pound company. You're talking from the position of having great experience and great aptitude to get the job done. So it's different things. And I think if I was to cite the biggest mistake that I see people make, the one that I see it almost on a daily basis, is they create a brand that just is not them. And I call people out on it quite regularly. I refer to it as corporate catfishing. You know, if you go to market in your content and you create this brand that has, you know, clipped professional tones, speaks in a certain way, if you do succeed in creating trust through that, sooner or later people are going to reach out to you, and they're going to be in this sort of format, Paul, where, you know, they're face to face, and they're going to realize that actually you're not what your content says you are, and the trust that you've created is immediately destroyed. So I think, you know, my observation is trust building starts right from day one, way before you ever contact a client in any way, shape, or form. What do you think?
And I guess it's, you know, human beings don't like change, and if you've been an executive in a senior role in a corporate for 15, 20 years, you'll get into habits. You know, the way you talk, the way you know, your personal gravitas, the way you carry yourself, the way you interact and engage with people, and those are kind of ingrained habits. So how do you, if you've got those habits, and if you're now aware that you've probably got to change from being that corporate person to the individual, how do you break those habits?
I have my view on it, which is, as you transition into that solopreneur journey, you have to show the world who you actually are as a person. You know, it's not about necessarily finding your why or finding your reason, but it's certainly about helping people understand what brought you to this point. And so I talk to people quite openly about, you know, the tail end of my corporate life experience and why I chose to go out as a solopreneur, which was nothing more complicated than I just tired of the politics and the red tape and the bureaucracy of big company life. And so when I coach people, my commentary, my observation is, if you leave big corporate life and you come out as a solopreneur and you bring that branding over with you, you're going to create that environment for yourself over here instead. So you've sort of rinsed and repeated. You haven't broken free of the things that you said you didn't like in the first place. You've just moved it somewhere else. So that side of things is quite important, is to take some time to think about, A, how do you want to be seen by the industry? And B, what is your storyboard regarding your journey? You know, was there a turning point that made you realize that this just wasn't for you anymore? Was it fate, luck, design, complete accident? And that's certainly the beginning of that authenticity journey.
And I guess, you know, for people who are in an in-house role and they're contemplating, you know, the next part of their career, and they're thinking about this portfolio work style, you know, getting into fractional leadership, they're probably kind of conflicted at the moment because they're in their jobs, they're in their role, they've got the politics and the bureaucracy of the corporate environment. They see this vision on the other side of the fence, which is this, you know, freedom and opportunity to pick your own clients and your own projects. But there is that piece where they've got to start thinking about their story, about that transition. What point should they be crafting that new narrative? Is it once they've left the corporate environment so they're not sullied by it, or is it during that environment because they're actually exposed to what's making them feel angry or bitter or frustrated? When is the right point to start crafting that piece?
As with many things, there's a happy path and there's a path that actually happens. I would much rather people think about their transition while they're in a position of safety to do so. And by safety, I mean, if you are full-time employed in a role and you feel that you would like to go the portfolio route, go the fractional route, then by all means start that transitional journey while you're being employed. And that's not about taking something from your employer. I'm not saying run a side hustle, but certainly think it through. Certainly do the legwork. Set your mind in terms of all of those topics that we have to cover before we go to market, while you have safety on your side. So that's. However, a lot of people choose to start up as fractionals because of a turn of events. So either their company went to the wall, or they made them redundant, or they had a bust up and they felt they had to leave. Certainly from a coaching perspective, those people are the ones that I challenge the most firmly in terms of their decision-making process. Choosing to go fractional because there is no alternative, or are you choosing to go fractional because it's what you've always wanted to do? Because if it's the former, it's going to cause you all sorts of problems because you haven't yet made the mindset shift. You're probably going to market for the wrong reasons, which is, a vision that you might be able to achieve cash injection rapidly. You'll go to market with all the wrong messages and the wrong impetus. So I think it's, for me, the right way to do it is to start thinking about it while you've still got an income, while you're still generating revenue, and you feel safe.
And it also gives you that time to craft that narrative, doesn't it? To get your story straight, to start getting your mindset in the right place, so that when you do make that transition, when you hand in your security key and you leave the corporate for the last time, you can enter into this new phase of your career totally focused. You know what your story is. You've rehearsed that story in your mind probably several times, and you can actually go to market with, I guess, a more positive conviction, maybe a bit of a swagger, I guess, about your new role and that new value. And that probably leads us nicely into the next segment, I guess, where once you've got that narrative fixed and finalized and you start going to market, some people will kind of build trust with this new narrative, with this new story. But there's probably other ways in which you can sort of prove, I guess, the value you offer and the trust you can build. So what are the different ways of building trust once you've actually got your story straight in your own mind? And then when you go to market, what sort of things can I do as a marketer or a fractional executive to win that trust?
So I come back to the standard depiction of a sales funnel for this, because when you first come to market, what you can't do is just start knocking on people's doors and saying, "Hey, I'm a great X. Hire me or use my services." It genuinely doesn't work like that. If you think about that standard funnel depiction, at the very top, you've got your attraction layer, which is about making people aware that you even exist. And there's trust in that. Your personal journey, by writing about that and by doing so authentically, you create trust. People start to understand who you are, what you stand for, what you like, what you don't like. It's really important. If you go further down the funnel, once people have been attracted into your funnel, if you like, you've then got your nurturing stage. And so for me, when I'm coaching people, I'm talking about nurturing. What we're saying is, the nurturing stage is really about providing value in whichever format. There are lots of ways that we can provide value to potential clients, but it's about providing value free of charge that demonstrates you are credible and you are capable of doing what they will need you to do. And that might be, in the context of thought leadership. It might be in content creation. It might be white papers. It might be, free discovery type activity. Even things like this, the podcasts and the webinars and all of those types of things, demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. And so they nurture your audience. And then if you go right to the very bottom of the funnel, those people that they know who you are, you've achieved a level of trust through your nurturing and credibility. they're considering maybe you might be the right person for them. So they're in that decision-making conversion type segment of the funnel. For those people, case studies, all of the social proof stuff. So, case studies, testimonials, referrals, they are absolutely what are needed at the bottom end of the funnel to show people that actually you're the right choice. And that's the way I look at it. Is up here in the top, it's about becoming known. But what you actually do is you make yourself one of 1,000 other people that are saying similar things in that market. As you move lower down the funnel, it's basically about refining and reducing the choices for your potential client to say, actually, I am the one that you need. And this is the evidence that supports that. So attraction content is about authenticity. Nurturing content, or nurturing material, if you like, is about value. And then the final stage, conversion or decision-making content, is about social proof, each of which goes towards trust.
And at the end of the day, we deliver a service and no one really knows what that service is going to look like or feel like until they've experienced it. But I think there's a few other things that any professional can also do to, I guess, top up that credibility. At VCMO, we ask, any fractional marketer that wants to be part of the network, we ask them that you've got to be a chartered marketer or aiming towards chartership. Because we're not a regulated industry, it's not like law or accountancy where you have to pass certain exams and you have to maintain a certain level of CBD to maintain your license. But I think, for marketers, certainly looking at going down the chartership route, that's a really powerful way to demonstrate to the market, I'm at the top of my game. I'm committed to maintaining my knowledge through CPD. And it kind of says, this is the benchmark. Do you encourage people to get accreditations or CPD and put those badges on their LinkedIn profiles or websites?
In certain disciplines, in certain role types or role families, yes, but it doesn't apply universally to everybody. If I take the technology roles, certainly the technology leadership roles, what you've done, where you've been, the value you create outperforms any accreditation that you can get in that regard. However, if I was coaching some of the other C-suite roles, if you take the finance roles, there's certainly accreditations, there's governing bodies, there's recognized badges, if you like, that are super valuable. And the same, as you say, legal has its own remit, audit has its own remit, marketing has its own remit. So in those instances, if there is something that is relevant to your industry, then you absolutely should seek to get that. CPD is an interesting one, and I'll take your opinion on it. I am a registered CPD provider, but I questioned the validity of getting fractional formula accredited as a CPD-based course because I couldn't quite make my mind up whether the CPD points were relevant to a solopreneur or not. What do you think?
VCMO hasn't gone that particular route in terms of us becoming CPD accredited. That's why we've built partnerships with people who are good at that already. So, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, people like PR Smith and his SOSTAC program and others. I think, particularly for marketers, it is an important thing to have as a badge because if you look at it from the end customer's point of view, if you look at it from a CEO's perspective, if I'm speaking to lots of professionals who can come into my business and fix a marketing problem, they've probably all got a very strong CV of what they've delivered in the past. And I can probably go back and do some reference check-in, speak to other companies where these individuals performed and say, how did Joe or Sally perform? Did you get on with them? Did they really deliver what they said? Blah, blah, blah. At that tiebreaker question, if you've got two candidates who are equally strong and you can't decide between the two, which one are you going to pick? And I think me personally, I would always pick the one that demonstrates that commitment to ongoing education and knowledge, because it says to me they are committed to keeping their toolkit sharp. They are probably more likely to come across new things, new knowledge, new ways of doing something that can benefit my business. So I think the CPD route is important. But again, I take your point. It does depend on what flavor of fractional leadership you're going down.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's a minefield. I think, to your final statement there, if you're entering into the fractional world, if there's one thing I can guarantee you will need to be able to do is continuously learn, and not only learn, but be able to demonstrate that you can put that learning to use quickly. If I look at some of the strongest fractional consultants I've met, their ability to consume knowledge and immediately use it is what sets them aside from the rest. I think that's a good closing point on that topic.
I think that takes us really nicely into, I guess, the final segment of today's episode, which is, it's one thing to earn trust, but it's another thing to leverage that trust to retain a long-term client relationship. And I think certainly in fractional marketing leadership, that the value there is, we're looking to build long-term relationships with clients. We're not there to just come in for a few days and jump out of your business. We are there to support your business over the long term, over your growth trajectory. So despite the fact that we would typically engage with a client for a few days a month, and some of that could be remotely, we need to be able to deliver trust and value. Dan, what techniques do you coach to turn one-time clients into long-term partners? How can a fractional executive do that?
It's a great topic, and it's one that many people trip over, I guess. As I said before, a lot of fractional consultants come to market and they immediately try and go and hunt the sort of whale contracts. I want a big retained contract with a client that's going to see me for the year. And unfortunately that doesn't work, because, as I said before, you're not known, liked and trusted. So I ordinarily look to start somewhere smaller, with the sort of mid-ticket diagnostic type offer that enables you to build that level of trust. That normally gives you the right level of trust to be able to segue into a retained service type model. But then, just even in the conversation regarding retained services, the most common objection for retained fractional services is you're not as committed as an employee, or you're not going to be as available on demand as an employee would be. So I think you have to start thinking about your counterpoints to those objections way before they come up. Don't get caught on the hoof with those. Those are the obvious ones that I hear in almost every conversation I have with potential clients. So from my perspective, my commentary is that, well, actually, I'd like a retained relationship with you that stretches off into the distance. Therefore, I'm actually more committed. I don't have a safety net here. I don't have that feeling of continued employment. I know that if I don't perform, if I don't deliver the services that I've offered, if I don't continue to add value, that you terminate contracts and I have to start that client acquisition process all over again, which is time consuming and expensive. So that's at the front. If you are in a retained service model, and you have a client, you've got them on so many hours per month, then the other types of mistakes that I see people make that undermine trust is not doing anything outside of the terms of the contract. So the contract says 4 hours, therefore we work 4 hours. If we do 5, we bill you 5. It's black and white, sort of almost legal mechanics. For me, if you want to retain a client indefinitely, or certainly in the longer term, then you have to do more. You have to provide that level of thought leadership. You have to be able to be on hand, to assist, to help, to mentor, to coach in many respects your client. You have to be seen to be a trusted advisor to the organization. And that means that you have to go above and beyond the letters of the contract that you've signed. And so the way I do that is, in the first instance, outside of that cost model, so if it's let's take a 4 hours a month type model, outside of that, I will make sure that I do regular check-ins with various people within the business. And I will make sure that they are structured and that they're scheduled from the outset. So it's not ad hoc. It's not something that I can forget about. I'll make sure that, those sessions are documented, the actions are captured, the actions are followed up on, so that people see that actually I'm taking this seriously. It's not about landing and expanding. It's about just doing enough that people see that you actually take it seriously and that you have a great deal of concern for them as a client and as an organization.
And that's probably a good point to close this show. So if you've been watching or listening to this episode, I hope you found some value from the discussion we've had, and you take that learning into the next part of your fractional career. In the next episode, we'll be discussing how fractional marketers need to navigate the journey from initial contact to contract. So Dan, thank you again. It's been a great show. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to the company on the next episode.
Cheers, Paul. I'll speak to you soon.